Welcome to today's episode of What's a Tech. Now, today I'm actually excited to be joined by Ashton Jones. He's an HR leader that is super passionate about helping his company and peers actually understand the benefits of implementing an agile methodology for their HR departments. So if you've been in tech for any amount of time, you know the agile process. However, this is the first time I've actually ever heard of anyone using it to create a killer HR strategy. So let's dig in. All right. Hey, everybody. I'm here with Ashton Jones, and he's doing something legitimately crazy. I've never heard of it before in his HR department. I'm actually really excited to hear his perspective and how this whole thing kicked off. But after speaking with him previously, it kind of makes sense. And so I'm so happy to have you on the show with me today, Ashton.
Yeah, of course. Well, really appreciate you inviting me on, and it was great having conversations with you previously, and I'm glad to share with others what we're doing here.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think many people know of Agile. Not everybody outside of the software and technology world knows exactly how it works and so forth. But before we jump into that, I always like to ask something to kind of get to know you. So from my perspective, there's a lot of things, albeit that you're probably 20 plus years younger than me, that we have in common, just to be completely honest. And so I'd like some other of my listeners to get to know you a little bit. So like maybe just share some things that you enjoy doing in your free time. Like what are your 5 to 9 passions?
5 to 9. I'll try to reduce it down to that. I definitely, I love people. And so if people are doing things, then I tend to like what they're doing. I'm married almost 4.5 years now. I just celebrated the birth of my second son a little over 18 days ago. So apologize
Congrats,
if I
man.
have the sleepy eyes. Thank you. I appreciate it. But my hobbies, I grew up in a family that really likes to learn. So I love learning new things. Currently own a home that we're fully stripping, renovating. I'm trying to finish our master bathroom and tiling right now. I love barbecuing, cooking. I do have a passion for obviously my generation, so I do like video games. I am kind of geeky and nerdy on that side. I'm an avid Dallas Cowboy fan. My whole family is. Besides that, my passion is definitely people. Yeah, I know. Trust me, I understand the heartbreak. It is I understand it well. Since I've been alive, and this will age me, my team has never won a playoff game. And so I've never been alive. So hopefully that means that I'm not a bad luck charm or anything, but definitely avid Dallas Cowboy fan.
Yeah, it's been a rough go. I mean, the 90s were amazing. Obviously, the 70s were really good too for the Cowboys, none of which you remember. So
no, see, I look at those videos as like what could be, and then I'm like,
right.
Maybe next year. That's our word, right? Is maybe next year. But we we're gonna do well this year. I think Prescott, he's been doing a lot of good training. We just traded for Branded Cooks. I think our average 40-yard dash is now like a 4.4 for our wide receivers. So we have a pretty speedy wide receiver core this year. So be on the lookout. We're coming at you.
Speed kills, man. So especially somebody who played football, I trust me, I know speed kills. So I'm excited to talk about this topic because I don't think anybody's ever talked about it before. I've never heard anything on it. So I'm interested to hear maybe a little background on, well, let's do this. Instead of jumping directly into what kind of prompted you to jump into Agile, do you mind sharing kind of prescriptively what is Agile? Why does it exist? Why do technologies companies use it? And then let's go into like what was your thought process in developing a strategy that was like a Agile methodology?
Absolutely. And by no means would I classify myself as an agile expert or anything like that. I've definitely adopted some of the principles to come into my field. But ultimately, agile is a methodology or a program methodology in order to deliver products in a unique way. It's often compared to like waterfall methodology and things like that. It's a way in which you deliver features of a larger project in small increments. So then you can then reflect on it at a little bit at a time and to your stakeholders. So if you're trying to create, like, for example, if your project is to create some cookies, right, and you want to create a really, really great cookie, you would first mix the batter, and then you would showcase your stakeholders the batter to make sure they're good with the batter. And then you would add the chocolate chips, your flavorings and things like that, and then show them to make sure that's the right proportion and consistency. And then you would bake them, and then you would deliver them. So you have stages in which you create a product in small ways so that if there are changes that need to be made, your stakeholders have input throughout the different stages, so you can change them and a more you don't have to deliver a full product and then say, hey, you made chocolate chip cookies, we really wanted coconut cookies, and you're like, what, how did we get there? So the agile methodology allows you to satisfy your customers or your stakeholders requirements in smaller increments to make sure you don't have to backtrack as far.
Yeah, and I can't tell you how important that is when you're writing code or developing a UI for a software platform or something like that.
Right.
Because you don't get to the end of the line and you've delivered a product that doesn't meet the expectations either of the market or clients or shareholders, like you said. And so I'm curious, you take that methodology, that thought process, which is very methodical, it's typically 2-week sprints and things like that. You take that and now you're applying it to HR. Maybe you mentioned it was a hybrid before. So
right.
Like, how did you consider taking the agile methodology and applying it to human resources?
I mean, it's something that I've always thought there must be something out there. I've been a part of HR teams in the past, and I would say the majority, and it's not a knock on my profession or the people. It's just that our tendency is to be people experts. We're not necessarily process experts or technology experts. We're people experts, and so I luckily have grown up. Like I mentioned, I have the love of learning, and I've seen ways, and I have this kind of passion for efficiency and process. And I've always been told that HR is a cost center. I've been told that, and I hate that. I absolutely hate that, because I feel I don't just take money. I'm not just a cost. Like, I add value, right? Of course, I add value. And so since early in my career, I wanted to be a value added asset, but also I fully believe that HR can be a value added center, not just a cost center. And so I've had as a question, how do I do this, for years? And I grew up kind of in my career at the very beginning at Toyota. So there's the lean manufacturing side, so Lean Six Sigma, and there's some relations to Agile there, and Scrum and Kanban and things like that. And then coming over here, I now work for a technology company. We're a cyber risk security company that does cyber risk consulting for the government, as well as we do online education. So we're a software company. We develop software as that's what we do. And so I come into this organization, and they are my people. I get them. They're process oriented. They have this methodology in which every single department can be operating on these micro sprints to then be able to then go back to the stakeholder, say, hey, does this work? Does this work? Does this work? And so you're able to be fast and efficient. Except our HR team was trying to get there, but we weren't there just yet. And yet it was definitely on the horizon. And I was speaking with our HR director, her name's Tony, and she and I are speaking, and we're talking about what's going right, what's going wrong. They already had, we use a software called Jira. They already had a couple flows going in Jira. And we said, well, we need to move all of our processes into Jira. We need to move, there's too much success happening from this one flow to not move all of our process into a sprint cycle, into at least an agile cycle. And obviously we deal with people, so things can't be 100% cyclical, but we definitely have flows that tasks and activities happen on a routine, consistent basis to ensure that we're delivering high level value. And so that we're not just reactive to employees, but we're also proactive at delivering products to our internal customers or our employees before they even need it, before they technically say, hey, we have to have that. We're delivering products right now. From my experience in HR, the things that we've currently been able to do, I've been with this organization for almost a year now. In just that year, we've already been able to deliver products that in past teams I've been on and just knowing how other HR teams work, it would be multiple years before the things that we've currently delivered would have been delivered. And so that's kind of why we chose to go into it, is the efficiency and the ability to get feedback from our employees. It's naturally part of the process to get feedback. We are a collaborative organization. One of our values is collaborative innovation. And so unless we are collaborating already, we're not owning who we are as a team member. And so it was a natural, it was easy for our team to buy into it because it fits our values and the way the rest of our actual other producers like our software team operates.
So I'm curious, with every implementation of a new process, there is inevitably going to be some challenges or some form of resistance, not necessarily always from people, but sometimes obviously HR processes, as you mentioned before, don't fit in the same box, right? And so talk a little bit about that you encountered in the whole kind of implementation process.
Yeah, and I would say we're still implementing. We like I mentioned, we're hybrid, and so we are maturing as an HR team. And so I think the biggest key to our success is that we don't expect to be like our software teams after they've been mastering it, and it's part of how every software team operates is through this type of methodology. So we're not comparing ourselves and saying, hey, we're doing a bad job because we're not at their level yet. So the roadblocks often were for us the fact that we wanted to be like them. And so is to keep up the encouragement and say, hey, a little bit at a time. we don't have to have all of the artifacts. There's the different Scrum, they're called Scrum or Scrum ceremonies. We don't have to have all of those buttoned up, perfect, fully comfortable with those immediately. We can do what's called backlog refinement. We can get used to, originally, for example, we would have these tickets or these activities that we needed to do where the title would be a full description of the activity, but then that became cluttered. Or I would assign one of these tickets to our HR generalist, and then she would be like, okay, I finished. And then I would say, no, you're not. Not everything got done. She said, well, I did everything I thought I was supposed to do. And then I realized, well, that's because I didn't put a good definition of done in the ticket, which is part of maturity in the agile process, is putting an accurate definition of done. And so I would say our roadblocks have mostly been our immaturity of the process and just getting used to it. We can't expect ourselves to be running a ace agile HR team tomorrow. We have to mature into it, accept criticism. There's something called sprint retros or sprint retrospectives that encourage your team to talk about what went right, what went wrong, what do we need to improve on. And there's a host of different templates on how to run those well. But ultimately, the goal is to celebrate what you did. That's really important, to celebrate what you accomplished in your sprint or in your 2-week cycle or whatever timeline that is. Talk about and encourage those who did really, really well. Call it out. Say, hey, wow, you crushed this part. You did this really well. Way to overachieve there. And then say, okay, now let's be open and honest on what we need to do to mature and improve. And so all that's important parts of the retrospective that then encourages you to mature in the way that your team needs to mature.
One of the things I've experienced from the software development side is that a lot of times these sprints have, these checkpoints, as you mentioned, where they would present something. A lot of times it would be, hey, here are the new features. This is what we developed. Check out the new UI. There's a variety of different things they would show you. Or, hey, we've been working on the back end system, and we were updating these, grids and all this other stuff, right? So that's what I've experienced from a software development standpoint. I'm curious, with your adaptation for human resources, are you doing a weekly sprint review with the rest of the organization?
Yeah, I mean, we're not doing weekly. We have on a quarterly basis, we have goals or rocks that every team in the organization sets. And so, for example, just to kind of be transparent, this quarter, our rock is onboarding 2.0. And so we're trying to make our onboarding more elevated, more experience driven. And so we're going to be putting together essentially some milestones and sprint stories to achieve onboarding 2.0. And so at the conclusion of each sprint, you usually have a presentation of the work you've done to your stakeholders. And so currently right now, our maturity level as a team is we consider our product owner to be our senior HR member. So that would be our HR director. So as we as a team at the end of a sprint present what we've accomplished so far to her, and then she is the one presenting that information out to the organization and where we're at. And that's just the maturity level that we are at right now. We do have state of the company's strategic meetings with our managers that we say, hey, this is where we're at with this. We want feedback. Here's a showcasing of what we've done. Please provide feedback on a regular basis on how we're doing. We aim to be more mature in the future at structuring that feedback for our company. At the moment, though, our product owner is our HR director. We create the products for her to then present to the actual company as here are the deliverables that we actually have.
So I'm curious from an adoption standpoint, if you were to put a percentage on it, like, hey, we adopted 60% of the agile process or whatnot, and then specifically, what pieces have you purposely not included in kind of your process? Maybe because they're not applicable, or they just weren't valuable in human resource department.
So I would say we've adopted probably about 85 to 90% of the philosophy and the principles. They in application are probably less structured than the way our software teams are. So our software team, for example, they have like swim lanes. So the activities, there's an activity and that a product has to go through, every product goes through, development, and then QA, and then all of these other things. And those are swim lanes. We are a small team, and so we don't actually operate on swim lanes. We operate on assignee. So a task can go from in progress to done, review, completed. And so we have columns versus swim lanes. And so that's just an adaptation to what typically a software company would do or a software team would do. When we deliver our products, we often HR wants to deliver like hey, here's our new engagement program. Right, here's our new recruiting system. Right, we want to do these huge things from an HR perspective, and what we've learned and what we've adopted primarily, which has made us successful, is those could all be in bite-sized chunks. So a good example would be we created as a company we operate on entrepreneurial operating system model, which is called EOS. It's a method by which we do business, a communication structure. There's some meeting cadences and things like that. We like to make sure that the company knows that we are. And I'm messing up my words right now.
That's okay. I mess them up all the time. So yeah, no, it's just understanding like which ones, which processes specifically have you adapted for HR or even evolved for your own purposes was really what I was trying to understand.
So
because I'm sure there's so much that's different about human resources than software development. Not only that, you mentioned you had a team of 6. Right. That's very different than most software development teams who, in your case, are probably, if not dozens, probably multiple dozens of people focused on developing software. And so those teams are much larger. The swim lanes are much narrower. This person works on this, this person works on that. And so it would make sense that you'd have to adapt it for your own purposes. But understanding what pieces of that were really good. And then I'd also like to understand Jira, being able to leverage that platform, like how has that worked as well?
Yeah. So to kind of go back to Jira is, we would not be able to be as successful as we are unless we had the stellar IT team that we have. To be able to leverage Jira is a massive, amazing, powerful system. Really love it. But we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing unless we also had the expertise of our IT team and the collaboration of them. I literally meet with our IT team twice a week to go over how we are improving and making our systems, notifications, automations, flow changes, process changes to make just our HR team be able to deliver better value. And so Jira is amazing. You need a good IT team to leverage its full potential. However, the biggest part of that is the fact that you have within Jira your tickets, and then your tickets get put into boards. And so we have Kanban boards, such as we have HR production. So those are like the big projects we're trying to complete. And then we have our HR daily. So when we run sprints, we run our projects through HR production. So we run very normal sprints, sprint planning, backlog refinement, sprint retro, daily stand-ups. We do every artifact and every ceremony within the Scrum cycle. However, the difficulty and the maturity part is, and the hybrid part is that we want to be able to deliver things in 2 weeks, but when our employee in the middle of, say, hey, we're wanting to create and get this feature out by next Friday. Fantastic. But then when an employee says, hey, I have this personal life event that just happened that I need help with. Well, I'm sorry, that is more important than us delivering this random little feature, right? And so we have to then drop our sprint goals to be able to handle that reactive event. And so where I would say what we're having to adopt and be hybrid with is understanding and booking ourselves out and putting the amount of story points out, assuming that things that are unplanned and not predictable are going to come out up in our daily life. So that's where a lot of maturity that we've grown into is, okay, we're saying that this, we want to get 40 story points done. But then when we get to the end of the 2 weeks, we'll have done like 15. Well, do we get mad at ourselves? Do we say, well, we said 40, but we only completed 15. Well, we have to do something additional and be hybrid to normal agile teams, which we have to say, well, what work did we do actually outside of our sprint, outside of that? And we have to congratulate our team and give ourselves kudos for saying, what work did we actually do? And so we have two different things. We have our HR daily, which operates in like a Kanban board style. Ticket comes in for an employee event. Let's move this employee event from in progress to QA to then done. And we just get those completed as they come in, we get those completed. And then we have our sprints that we have story points and stories that then we move along over a sprint cycle. So we kind of have a hybrid operations going at the same time.
So I'm curious, what kind of day-to-day changes have you seen by implementing this? And then ultimately, I think people, if they're sitting here listening to this, are saying, what kind of results could I expect to see? Let's say I do have an IT department that can help me set up a Jira. I can run this process. Maybe I'm a little bit familiar with it because we are a software company and I am familiar with seeing these sorts of things. But like, what kind of results? I mean, are you saving half your time? People not going in different directions, working on similar projects, wasting a lot of time or so forth. So kind of give me some idea of how it's changed your day to day and specifically what kind of results?
I think the biggest part that happens when you adopt Agile within an HR team is the enhanced communication and focus of your team. You mentioned kind of the potentially to sprawl out and be doing a dozen little things at the same time. Well, naturally that might happen in some degree, just because, like I said, random events can happen. You're dealing with human beings, and so you might have specialists doing their own specialist type tasks. When you can say, okay, let's all focus on this, and let's bring everyone's expertise to strategize how we get this major project done. You can expect better communication, understanding, and honestly, just quicker results, more efficient results. We've seen our day change from being, I'm not going to say confused, but more disjointed, not fully understanding exactly what is expected out of me or other members not knowing what's expected out of them and saying, okay, well, did you handle that issue or did you complete this? And because we've adopted Agile, we all know not just what we're supposed to do, but what everyone else is doing. And so that allows us to operate in unison and concert with one another versus just randomly. And so I think when a team just starts adopting agile. Not even, you don't have to be this grand, huge, mature team, but just adopting different ceremonies, just starting with a kanban board of here are the things we need to do. And we're going to, in the morning, take our HR team and say, okay, who's doing what today? And divide it up. And then as you complete tasks, move it to the done column. And then at the end of the day, we'll review what we did. Even starting off with that, I think you can expect tenfold the amount of actual work being done, but also in understanding what other people do and employ and team morale. It's important when you're part of a team to be operating with one another. Teamwork is working together towards a common objective and doing it well, right? You don't. At least that's what good teamwork is. And so, if you want to be a good team, you all want to be moving together as one, and that's what I've seen the system do more than anything is us moving together as one team.
That's incredible. So I'm curious, any unexpected outcomes or surprises throughout this process?
I do think the unexpected part was we're pretty ambitious as what we want to do. We see, we're looking at ourselves and saying we want to be here. I will say that what was unexpected was that we weren't going to get it right the first time, and that we actually are going to learn how to do it better. You might know, oh, this is exactly how we're going to implement it. And then as you go through your retros and you get the collaboration from the rest of their team, you might think as, the senior leader of the team, we're going to do it this way. And then you start it that way and then you do a sprint cycle and then your entire team says, nah, I didn't really like that. Well, if you're a humble leader and the goal is to actually create efficiency, being able to say, okay, let's do it. Let's change it. Let's adopt the way that our team actually wants to operate. That is the way it's supposed to work. You definitely need to put ego aside, have the best person for each task handle each thing. So, I mean, just as an example, I'm our HR manager. I'm not our HR director. I would say in normal hierarchical structures, you would say, well, the HR director has to do all of the planning, all of the directing, all of the stuff. Well, Tony, our HR director, what she's great at is she's great at being that product owner. She's great at asking the questions. She's great at saying, hey, here's the standard that we need to be at, and then communicating that out. Where my strengths are is at looking at all the information, all the things that need to get done, and arranging the tasks to the right person. And so that's what's called like the Scrum Master, the person that does the daily stand-up. Because those are my strengths, I was given that opportunity to lead in that way. Well, if you're a hierarchical structure, Tony might have just said, well, I'm going to do this way, and I'm going to be that person. Because she was reflective and humble, she understands where her strengths are, where my strengths are, and I had to do the same thing. I came in here saying, well, I need to be a tasker, right? Yeah, I need to delegate, but like I derive my value by how much technical work that I do. Well, we have an individual on our team, Sydney. She is tenacious above everyone else. She can be given a list of tasks and go boom, focus, and go boom, 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 and knock them out. Well, we had to adapt to that strength. And so I think that's what I wasn't expecting was the amount that actually going in, I thought it was going to be one way. And then because of the feedback of our team, our process changed to match the strengths of our team.
As it should. I couldn't agree more with that thought process and methodology. And good on Tony for seeing the talent that she has on the team, including yourself. So I'm really glad to hear that. I'm curious, what tips, let's say I'm in, right? I'm like, this sounds like the best thing since sliced bread. And I don't even know who came up with that silly, thing. I guess if I had to slice my bread every single day, I would
sliced bread is pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it, especially if it's extra white. Or maybe extra gluten. What tips would you give in evaluating, hey, does this fit for us? And then potentially implementing something like this. Jira's not the only technology out there, but let's say they don't have a platform. You can still apply an agile process or methodology to something. So what tips would you give? Maybe a top 3.
Yeah. I think the first one is that no step towards the direction of agile is too little of a step. You don't need to be, we're a team of 6. you might be sitting there as a team of HR of one saying, well, does this apply to me? Or we have a smaller team, or we have a large team. How does this work? I think that it can be adopted with anyone. And I think no step towards Agile is going to be a waste. I actually have a friend who's in operations and in a different company. And I said, hey, just do a Kanban board, literally with sticky notes. Go on your whiteboard, grab 3 different colors, and each color is just a different member of your team, and have 3 different columns, and write out all your list to do, and then assign it based on color, and boom, just have daily stand-ups. You're starting Agile, right? You're starting. You have to start. You then also, as a leader, have to be reflective. You have to be willing to continually improve. So one, no step towards implementing Agile is too small. But any step towards it, you'll start seeing little results. 2, it doesn't matter really your size. It doesn't have to be Jira. It can be sticky notes. The third one is you have to have input from your team. You can't expect it to do it on your own. You definitely need input from your team. Like I said, lessons learned. You're not going to go. You're going to go in with one thought, and then you're actually going to do the work, and then you're going to say, wow, I didn't know that it was going to work out that way, so let me adapt. We run our HR team with an HR, a daily tasking, and then our product tasking. Maybe that's slightly different for y'all, depending on how your products work and what you're even allowed to do within your organization. So those would be my 3 tips. No step is too small. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Ashton. Incredible insights, and I just love the thought process. It's out of the box. I started, when I first started in HR specifically, or working with HR people, HR was not very sophisticated. It had a very limited skill set, and the type of people that focused on that weren't necessarily career HR people. They weren't even, people. They were usually more administrative minded. Not that that's bad. It's just, it's evolved very much over the years, and to see where we're going, where we're at today is incredible. And so I appreciate you sharing all these ideas with myself and my listeners. And so thank you for coming on here with me today, Ashton.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. It was a pleasure getting to, I've been listening to all your podcasts and seeing the polls you put out there, and I know you're definitely leading the charge and trying to say what the heck is, what the heck, right? What the tech. I appreciate what you do. I think that we need voices out there in the space to kind of bring people into the fold of understanding that technology can be useful outside of just other teams, that even HR can adopt technology and enhance their teams and their processes.
That's absolutely correct. 100%. Well, that wraps up this episode of What the Tech. I hope you'll boop the like button and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And make sure you say something in the comments for my man, Ashton. I think he did a great job today and shared a lot of really valuable insights. So we'll see you next week. Thanks.